The invitation, it's wonderful to be here. I'll obviously share a little of my experience as a person living with type 1 diabetes for 34 years, but also as a researcher and leader of the NCDs Forum in Brazil, an initiative that brings together public, private, and for-profit sectors in order to identify priorities and build partnerships and collaborations to improve the NCD scenario in the country. So I'll start by sharing some of the reality that we see in the world, that children with type 1 diabetes, they are dying early, and it's not because of lack of insulin, actually. It's because of lack of diagnostics. They are not even diagnosed. And that's why they are not part of the statistics many of the times, because they just die before even knowing that they had type 1 diabetes. And there is another thing that is important, that many times people are not aware of what is available, where to find, so the facilities that will help them to be diagnosed and to identify what they have and to make actions from there. And how about decisions that are made without their participation? This is another critical point. So, a very simple example. When it's decided, for example, a glucometer to be provided with strips for people living with diabetes taking insulin, many times the lancets are forgotten. So how can they measure without lancets? They didn't participate in the decisions. Or, also very common, and please pay attention to that next time you make this decision, and also please include people living with the condition in the decision. A lancet, there is cheap, is the one chosen to be procured because it fits the budget. The only problem is that that lancet destroys the finger. For this reason, the ones living with the condition who would need to measure their blood sugar will decide to measure as least as possible to avoid the pain. Thus, living with the condition was cheaper than their competitors, than their previous competitors, and this changed a lot this scenario. So, glucose sensors became much more popular worldwide, giving access, being affordable to many more people, and also being incorporated by many countries of the therapy with glucose sensors. Unfortunately, as I said, still today, very few people have access to glucose sensors. So, but I also like to bring some other examples of diagnostics. So in Brazil, equipping primary healthcare, we have been talking a lot about primary healthcare here these days, and the role of primary healthcare of changing the scenario of NCDs, and I agree completely, it is key. And in Brazil, in some parts of the country where we tested the use of point of care for HbA1c, and also equipping them with new strategies for measuring blood pressure, changed completely, so the potential of primary healthcare to truly make a difference. So for example, in some regions, HbA1c was reduced 1% after incorporating point of care there. And for blood pressure, 3 to 6 times more people reaching the target after those changes. And as a consequence, over 10% of reduction in infarctions and strokes due to these improvements. So, and still about primary health care and to accessibility of diagnostics, can we accept that only 10% of people with kidney disease are diagnosed? Can we accept that also around this number of people with dyslipidemia are diagnosed, and then we wait for late stages when those conditions are complicated, when people are having heart attacks or having strokes, then we pay attention to that? So no, That's why in Brazil we are advocating to incorporate point of care to be able to measure lipids, to be able to measure creatinine, to be able to measure HbA1c in the entire country through primary health care. One with living the condition and co-deciding what is being incorporated or the policies developed in the country. I would also like to share that over 10 years ago, real life survey in the US showed that among the technologies, the different technologies were reduced HbA1c the most was not insulin pen, was not insulin pump, it was actually insulin sensor. So diagnostics are key for anything. So so in this case of insulin sensors, it shows like a film, not as a picture that you have when you use glucose meter. So which allows you to make decisions before you're getting low or you're getting high in terms of blood glucose, and this makes a huge difference, obviously. It is a changing paradigm, and due to my 34 years living with diabetes, I've experienced the changing paradigms. When I was diagnosed, it was measuring the glucose in the urine, not in the blood. Then it changed it into glucometers, and then obviously now we have sensors available. Unfortunately, to very few people. It is something that we need to work on still. And well, in the past, when I was on still glucose monitoring, so doing finger sticks, I use it to measure 12 times a day in order to keep my HbA1c the way I wanted it to be. And obviously, it was not as good as using a sensor, still measuring 12 times a day. So who can have access to 12 strips a day? Nobody, right? And who will be willing to also to prick the finger 12 times a day? So I've been wearing a glucose sensor for 20 years now. And what also surprised me was that at that time when I started, it was very rare. Nobody else. So I was the first or the second person in my country wearing a glucose sensor. But later, so about 10 years ago, or point of care in this space. And we have published already some studies on cost effectiveness. So if you are, in case you are in doubt and want to know more, I'll be happy to share more about that. So I'd like then to close with some messages here. So first of all, it's obvious that we still need to negotiate and work in partnership with industry. A reduction in cost increases dramatically access to people living with the condition, to the self-care monitoring, but also the diagnostics closer to their homes, and the possibility of procurement by health systems. So, and health systems need to be people-centered. And people living with the conditions that will be impacted by the diagnostics decisions need to be part of the table where the decisions will be made. Meaningfully engage with voice and vote power. And yes, primary health care is the right place to improve the NCD scenario. So please don't blame people living with the condition or healthcare professionals for not achieving biomarkers targets and health goals if they are not equipped with tools to diagnose, monitor, and adjust therapy. Thank you.